Welcome to your Daily 5 for Tuesday, June 4th, 2024. I happened across an article it has both an audio podcast as well as a written transcription with editing, but editing for basically length. Over on The Verge, a discussion between Nilay Patel and the CEO of Zoom, whose name I'm going to attempt to get right here, Eric Yuan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's covering all different aspects of Zoom's plans for the future, but the most fascinating one, and even the article points this out, is this idea that the CEO is pitching about the idea that in several years or within a few years, I think it says a few years, there will be the ability for you to send a digital AI twin to go to a meeting for you. In other words, it would almost be a personal assistant, I think he called it a personal LLM inside that. He was using the idea of everybody having their own LLM that you could dispatch to a meeting that would be able to go to the meeting for you so you didn't have to, be able to actually make decisions in some cases, and basically be a second version. He used the term AI twin. So another you that can operate in meetings. And the more I thought about this, outside of the fact that I will be fascinated to see what this looks like if they start actually deploying it, but there's a really big problem with this concept that I think anybody who's worked in a big company is probably going to eventually figure out. Let's say they come to you and they say, all right, here's your digital twin, the digital you. You can use this to go to meetings, so you don't have to go to it. By the way, I'm sure that that's not going to extend too far past down the manager chain. That's going to be an executive and CEO function. You watch. Don't you want to walk into an evaluation for your job performance and it's a digital version of an executive? That sounds great. But let's say they did offer it to you. Okay, here it is. And if you want it to function as decisions, you basically have to tell it everything that you're thinking. If you're going to be managing people, let's say, it needs to know what you think of them and all blah, 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 all this type of thing. And the more you would think about it, because in most large companies and corporations, everything you do with the technology is logged and monitored for many reasons, but primarily for liability. And so you're not going to tell that digital twin everything that it would really need to know to act on your behalf. You're not going to say that, you're not going to tell it, okay, Eric in sales, that guy has not been able to meet any of his sales numbers for the last 3 quarters. So don't believe anything that he says, because you won't trust that A, that information won't get reported back to somebody, logged somewhere, and B, can you really trust that the AI won't somehow bungle delivering or at least computing that information? Is there not a possibility that when Eric speaks up and the AI disagrees, that it won't say, hey, you should be fired because you haven't made your things in 3 quarters? And everybody in that room is going to know where that information came from. Because if these are personal LLMs that are generated from you and not just from a repository of information somewhere, then they're going to know that that's an opinion that you shared with your twin, because as these things are being pitched by the CEO of Zoom, you would be the only one with access. This is not a shared pool that adopts the personality of the person who happens to check it out of the library or whatever. No, this is your LLM. So everything that it's going to be saying is going to be based on things you tell it. And again, those things tend to be known, especially if there's any part of it that might trigger a liability problem. So I don't even know how, in the utopian vision, really dystopian, but the high-end vision this guy has, the CEO of Zoom, I don't know how these would actually really be used. Because again, I don't see lower-level employees having access to it, and the ones higher up with more to lose, if their actual opinions might get out and get them in trouble, who's going to use these things? And really, think about what that meeting could look like if they all did. A room full of just a bunch of LLMs talking to each other? I mean, it would seem almost comedy-worthy to picture out what that meeting would be, but there again, what are you going to end up with? If everybody at the high level is sending an avatar, most people aren't even going to engage with those things. So what's the point? So I think this is just a pipe dream. It is something to say to get people talking about Zoom somehow, but even if it was to be implemented the way that this article lays it out, I just don't see anybody actually using it the way that Eric Yuan seems to think it will be. But by all means, because I'm actually really curious. I know some people who are into cybersecurity and do engineering stuff and may actually believe more in this than me, listen to the show. So go ahead and read this article or listen to the audio of it if you want, because I'm really fascinated if anybody listening thinks that this type of idea can actually take off. Because while it sounds cool in theory, the more I think about it, the more that it falls apart. But by all means, let me know if you think differently. Later.